Thank you, Richard. What a wonderful day it's been. And yes, this is quite a vast and profound topic, and we're honored and somewhat humbled to have been invited to offer at least a glimpse into these domains as Ezekiel here in this vision, peering out through the veils of ordinary reality into some new possibilities. We would like to open and invite you to open consciousness, your consciousness, and our collective consciousness to explore a number of different possibilities today. Albert Einstein has presented us with a daunting challenge when he said, "The world we have made as a result of the level of thinking we have done thus far creates problems that we cannot solve at the same level of thinking or consciousness at which we have created them. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if humankind is to survive." So we'd like to ask you and to look together this afternoon at what might be some of these new manners of thinking or of consciousness that are required in these times, and to consider, to contemplate through the lenses of both outer science and contemplative inner science disciplines, to contemplate what might be the implications and applications for spiritual leadership if we were to embrace and to deepen in these new modes and manners of consciousness.
So as we begin, we'd like to invite all of us just to come back to that still point within us, that vast, clear dimension of knowing within us. And if you like, just reach up and touch your heart or touch your belly and gently smile and just sense the stillness within which all the motion takes place. Sense the silence within which all the sounds arise and pass. And as you touch your heart and brighten the light of your true knowing and awareness, just sense how that ripples out from your particle like a boundless wave to fill the whole universe. And as you sit here right now, just sense, as you breathe, just a sense of coalescing as you breathe in as particle, and as you breathe out, wave, boundless wave. And that as you breathe and as you particle and you wave, you're sitting here in the presence of all other breathing beings, all other particle and waveform beings who you share the great sticky pudding of life with, as though you're a raisin here, and your every thought, your every action, your every word ripples out through the vastness of that in an infinitely consequential and meaningful way. And as you touch your heart and brighten the light of your awareness, can you imagine that as you brighten the light of your awareness in the jewel of your own heart, that light, that potentiality is reflected in the heart jewels of all beings everywhere, and affirms and activates that dimension of their own potentiality? And that through your own waking up and being present and opening your heart to love and caring, that in some way or another, that act within yourself is conveyed to and reflected in the hearts and minds and deepest dimension of all beings, who just like you are like an island poking up out of the sea, and we appear to be separate from each other in this great kind of optical delusion of perception. But just sense the deeper strata of our being, where we all connect in some core essential dimension that we'd like to explore with you today. We bring with us insights from probably a combined 90 years of exploration in the noetic frontier. I think I first glued a sensor on somebody's skull in 1972, and I've been looking at waveforms of consciousness since then, and much earlier than that with meditation, Michelle as well. So we bring to you, as ambassadors, insights from the Mind and Life Institute and the dialogues between inner scientists and outer scientists, trying to discern the nature of reality. Mind and Life is one of the best of the organizations in the world really promoting this kind of inquiry and dialogue. There's a lot of the videos from 30 years of conversations on the web, which you can search out. Their purpose is to promote human flourishing through promoting understanding and alleviating suffering. But with leadership in mind, last year we helped to launch with them the ACEL, the Academy for Contemplative and Ethical Leadership. And it says here in the description, in a time of disruption, unprecedented social and ecological change, many hunger for leadership marked by the consciousness, conscience, and capacity to catalyze and influence larger systemic change as it's needed. This is the time to move beyond primary focus on individual leaders and deepen our understanding of how teams, organizations, and networks shift the larger social field. We believe a new field of inquiry and practice, study, and research is needed now that can advance understanding of how contemplative and contemplation and mindfulness may play a critical role in such leadership. Just imagine if all the leaders of the world, or more of the leaders of the world, had really deep roots in presence, in listening, in humility in the face of the mysteriousness of the universe that we live in. We've also been involved with the work at CCARE at Stanford, the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education, which is part of the global compassion movement that's going on, exploring many domains, including compassion and technology. And we'd like to bring your attention to Dan and Tara Goldman's work with Force for Good, which was a collaboration with the Dalai Lama. Very good website, Join a Force for Good, with a wealth of resources. So if these days anybody who says, show me the evidence, it's like, how much would you like, you know? It used to be that was a big deal, but now there's just so much. So as we continue here, I just invite you to maintain the quality of your presence, your sincerity, your yearning to awaken more fully through participating in this conference, in this session, and hold that with a sense that may the light of that shine out through all of the networks of meaningful relationships that you're embedded with, and through you to all whose lives you touch, and through them to all whose lives they touch, and through them to all whose lives they touch. Some primary keys here, given that this is a conference on value. Clearly, worldviews determine worldviews and our sense of self, our identity, determine our values and our way of life. And that these are reinforcing. And clearly, if we've got highly entropic worldviews, that's going to be problematic, which we'll explore momentarily here. I love the combination of this quote and this image from Mark Henson. People were created to be loved. Things were created to be used. The reason the world is in such chaos is because things are being loved and people are being used. This is a painting called Sharing the Wealth, which if you ever do a conference and you want to like put it on the side of a building, Mark has huge murals of this that are portable. So with Richard's work, Richard, I really want to thank you personally for just the distinctions that you've given us about low and high entropic organizations and societies. I think it's a brilliant contribution to the science of consciousness, social psychology. So just a reminder that cultural entropy is a measure of the level of anxiety, fear, unhappiness, frustration that people feel about being able to meet their basic needs and to grow and to develop themselves. It's a reflection of the entropy within leaders. How many of you have lived with or worked with leaders who generously share their confusion and stress? Their entropy is boundlessly available to everybody in their sphere of influence. And how many of you have been with people who know how to listen and hold space and fill a room with love and lead from that place? So I think the good news is we have a choice. but which way will we go?
We're living in what some are calling VUCA times. This is an acronym originally came from the U.S. Army War College to describe the modern battlefield. But as we can see, and as I'm sure you've experienced, this acronym, which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, really plays out in so many of our domains of our lives and our world right now. These are also an example of clearly areas where there is VUCA dynamics at play. And how many of you, or does anyone think that the waves of change and complexity and challenge are going to get any smaller as we go forward? So clearly it's a time for both individual and collective capacity to be developed in order to meet and to thrive, to adapt and to grow and evolve in these VUCA times in ways that will help us to flourish. Interestingly, in the Zulu language, the word VUCA means to wake up. So in a sense, the remedy or the key is found right there within that same word. In order to thrive in VUCA times, to responsibly, to have the ability to respond in a beneficial way to these times, we need to wake up. As Richard said, mindfulness is, it's an ancient system, but it's really gaining a lot of popularity. A lot of folks all around the world are interested in learning mindfulness. Joel and I were asked to design and develop for Google the Mindfulness and Meditation Laboratory. We've been working with them for about 5 years within this meme of a mindfulness laboratory. But as John Kabat-Zinn, who some of you may be familiar with, really helped bring mindfulness-based stress reduction out into healthcare, and into education, and into business as well. Mindfulness and waking up takes courage. It takes courage to deepen our self-awareness and to begin to look more closely at the reality of what's going on and to look deeply into the true nature of reality. So just this beautiful quote, I'll read it. Mindfulness is not for the faint-hearted, nor for those who routinely avoid the whispered longings of their own hearts. It is for individuals interested in the adventure and challenges of self-exploration and transformation, for those who wish to taste and explore new ways of knowing and new ways of being, not someone else's, but one's own moment-to-moment experience. This is self-explanatory. The options, the choices. Recently, some of you probably know, through MIT and the ULab, there were these MOOCs, massive, open, online courses with over 50,000 people around the world participating. And at the end, folks were asked, what would it take to bring the vision, the intention, the creativity that you were able to clarify and to prototype during these courses, during the labs, into reality more fully? And the main word that emerged was courage. And I love that we were reminded that courage comes from heart, and to the willingness to stand by one's heart. And what's holding you back? What's the main thing preventing you from operating at the highest level of your potential? Fear. So looking at what's required to really open, to step out of the status quo and business as usual, to enter these new possibilities, to manifest new models and practices and ways of being. One of our teachers, Vimala Thakkar, lovely quote here, to be attentive requires tremendous love of living. The total revolution we are examining is not for the timid or the self-righteous. It's for those who love truth more than pretense, for those who sincerely and humbly want to find a way out of this mess that we, each one of us, have created out of indifference, carelessness, or lack of moral courage. And from Sogyo Rinpoche, he says, to be a spiritual warrior or a spiritual leader means to develop a special kind of courage. Innately intelligent, gentle, and fearless. But spiritual leaders can still have fear, can still be frightened. But even so, they're courageous enough to step out with it, to taste the suffering, to relate clearly to their fundamental fear. It's not that the fear goes away, but our relationship to it changes. We're willing to embrace it, to examine it, and to draw out without evasion the lessons from difficulties. And now, back to Einstein with this really key core insight that I would invite all of us to read out loud together. And before we actually start, I want to say that this really relates to how this wonderful day began with our indigenous elders, both from the First Nations people here in Canada and Marianne Coconut from the original people in Australia, really speaking to the wholeness that we're all related, this seamless oneness that we are one. A human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. We experience ourselves, our thoughts and feelings, as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in all of its beauty.
So in this spirit, when Václav Havel was invited to speak to the U.S. Congress a number of years ago, he gave this fantastic, inspiring speech, which you can search out. It's really worth reading the whole thing. But he says, without a global revolution in the sphere of human consciousness, nothing will change for the better. And so many of the calamities and catastrophes that are latent within the field are likely to come forth. So there's this impassioned call for us to wake up, to join in with this revolution. Again, Vimala said, in this era, to be a spiritual inquirer without social consciousness is a luxury we can ill afford. And to be a social activist without scientific understanding of the inner workings of the mind is the worst of folly. So we have a mandate here. We'd like to explore some of the deeper dimensions of the science right now and just crack this open for you a little bit. Keeping in mind that the more we listen, the more we will hear. The more we hear, the more and more deeply we will understand. We sat a year-long silent meditation retreat at one point. What else do you do after spending 6 months training special forces in meditation and biofeedback and neurofeedback? Our teacher for the year-long retreat was a mountain yogi teacher of the Dalai Lama named Genlam Rinpa. And Genlam said, as you enter into this retreat, keep in mind that gradually as the mind gets quieter and calmer and clearer, dimensions of reality will present themselves to you of which you were previously completely unaware. It's like the Hubble deep field image here of just, whoa, where did all those stars come from that were always there? So try this for a moment. Hold out your hands, okay? In one hand, hold everything that you understand, fully comprehend, or have mastery of, okay? And in the other hand, reach out and hold or touch the mystery. Okay? And just take that as a seed for a meditation to open the heart to humility. Let's explore this a little bit deeper. Of the whole electromagnetic spectrum, of all the octaves of energy and vibration, from waveforms as big as Mount Everest to like ones just above the threshold of Planck's constant, keep in mind only one octave of that is visible light. 1 octave. Can you imagine what's going on that we can't see that other creatures can? Our friend Bill Tiller at Stanford did a research project at one point with little kids and showed that they had a wider visual spectrum than adults do. Maybe they were seeing fairies. Okay? Deming, for all the TQM dinosaurs in the audience, those of us that are old enough. Deming said, we can only measure 3% of what matters, and the other 97% is mysterious. We live on the Big Island, and in Seattle, we're really involved with the astronomical community there. It's amazing to go to these mind-boggling lectures on, all of the science around cosmology and optical work and engineering and what's going on. And these cosmologists and astronomers will often get to a point where they stammer and say, but keep in mind that we can only measure 4% of what exists in the universe. And of that 4%, 3.96% is dust blowing between galaxies, which means that 0.04% is like chairs you're sitting in and bodies you're breathing in and planets. So mystery does prevail. I mean, anybody who says, show me the evidence. Get over it. Bucky Fuller offers this. It's an amazing. I just got this a couple weeks ago. Just read this or listen to this as a meditation. The almost totally invisible, non-sensorial electromagnetic web, sheath of environmental evolutional reality, phase into which humanity is now being born after 2 million years of ignorant gestation, is as yet almost entirely incomprehensible by humanity. 99.9% of all that is now transpiring in human activity and interaction with nature is taking place within the realms of reality which are utterly invisible, inaudible, unsmellable, untouchable by human senses. This invisible reality has its own behavioral rules which are entirely transcendental to man-made laws and evolutionary limitations or descriptions. This invisible reality integrities are infinitely reliable. It can only be comprehended by the metaphysical mind, the contemplative mind, guided by bearings towards something sensed as truth. And he goes on in some other writings of his to say, I am confident that humanity's survival depends on our willingness to comprehend feelingly, the way nature works. So just keep in mind, in one hand, hold all your data, all your descriptions, all your narratives, all your stories, and then the other, hold feelingly comprehending in direct perception the way things are. So who are you? Who are we? Who are we as leaders? These omnidimensional, mysterious, amazing beings capable of so much mischief. Einstein says the most beautiful and profound experience is the sensation of the mystical. It's the sower of all true science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. My religion consists of a humble admiration of the illimitable superior spirit who reveals itself in the slightest details we're able to perceive with our frail and feeble mind. I love this one. Let's see if it's, oops, I guess I've got to hit it here. Does that work? Oh. It's a video, but it's not playing. So this is a dynamic wind map, and look at how each of these storms blowing around the world looks like it has its own being, its own name, Ida or Fred or Hurricane George or whatever it may be, but there's just one world of wind. Great website. And in the brain, there's the DMV, the default mechanism network, that maintains this optical delusion of a separate self. But as we learn how to quiet it down through various kinds of contemplative practices like mindfulness and other meditation practices that quiet the DMV, all of a sudden we liberate ourselves to be fully functioning, more selfless servants of the greater good. And scientists like Edison say, people say I've created things. I never created anything. I get impressions from the universe at large and work them out, but I'm only a plate on a record or a receiving apparatus. What you will, thoughts are really impressions that we get from the outside. Where do our inspirations come from? How do we become more transparent to that? So, just this sense of anyone who's seriously involved in the pursuit of science at some point or another is convinced that some mysterious spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to that of humans, one in the face of which we and our modest powers must feel humbled.
And this is where the contemplative sciences and the contemplative practices really come in to help us cultivate this deeper capacity of perception and insight, realization. The purpose of contemplative practices, of which there are millions, mindfulness just being one key set of disciplines, a portal to perceive reality, but millions of contemplative practices is to increase our capacity to wake up or enlighten us regarding the actual nature of the deep, multidimensional reality of ourselves and our complex, infinitely consequential interrelationships with our world.
I'd also like to honor Alex Gray, the artist here, who's provided a lot of these images, medical illustrator at Harvard many years ago, deep practitioner, and wow, what powerful inspiration in these artifacts. So we'd like to go a little deeper into the science here. Great model inspired by Dan Siegel's work at UCLA. Watch for Dan's new book called Mind, which is coming out in November, which really explores kind of the boundless dimensions of mind that are here. Look at this through eyes of entropy, what we can do, what our capacity is, what Jay and I were talking about earlier, the sense of possibilities here for us to reduce entropy and awaken all the good stuff that comes with that. Three primary distinctions here we'd like to explore. Keeping in mind that the research in these domains of inner practices has gone up exponentially. This graph here starts at 1980. I started this work in the early 70s. You can see, how things have gone. And this is not just mindfulness research, but also on yoga and other forms of meditation. So it's a huge interest in this work. So let's look at coherent mind for a few minutes. Michelle mentioned our program at Google. It's wonderful when we have a corporate opportunity to really do it and speak openly and clearly to the science around this and the practices. And we're not just bundling it as developing a thriving culture or a resilience program or a leadership program, but we can just really tell it like it is. So I really thank Google for fantastic ride we've had with them. But the interesting thing is, there is no good working definition with regards to what mind and consciousness is. There's no consensus. We were at a conference of dozens of Nobel laureates and hundreds of researchers for 5 days, walked out there. There was no consensus about what mind even is. But at UCLA, Dan pulled together 40 scientists, and this is the best consensus they came up with, and it took them a year to get there. Three primary elements. Attention. So you're looking out through your eyes right now. Really be awake. Smile to yourself and go, I am seeing. Okay? And then look around the room and see something you haven't seen before. And put your attention on that. And notice that if you hold your intention, you can maintain your attention on that. And it takes intention to maintain attention. But then we also want to modulate that with attitude, a sense of curiosity, openness, acceptance, love, so it doesn't get too self-judgmental or dry. So these are like your hydrogen, helium, and lithium of kind of mental factors or elements to work with. I think we'll skip that. The research shows that as people practice mastering their ability to pay more attention, to be more coherent and mindful, that a host of favorable qualities emerge, some of which are personal, some of which are more interpersonal. There's 9 executive functions that are elicited and strengthened through the practice of mindfulness that give greater mental coherence. I don't have to read through those. Some fantastic work, the Atlas of Emotions, coming out of Paul Ekman and his daughter's work recently, drawing fine distinctions on the minute shades of emotion that we have, and showing the biological, neurological, biochemical nuances of all of these, helping us draw finer distinctions, like being connoisseurs of our neuroses or fine chemists of our own internal biochemistry and emotional states of mind. So it's a fantastic time in terms of the mind sciences, in terms of nuances that are available. But stretching this a little bit further, there's thousands of rigorous studies that affirm the boundless, limitless nature of the mind. And there are a number of major protocols that have been used at Princeton, at Stanford, other universities around the world doing research on this, that essentially conclude that our minds are not walled off from each other. That the mind is boundless, boundaryless, and all in some way our minds are connected. And as Einstein said, the deeper we go into science, the more we open to a sacred view. Look at these two quotes by Schrodinger and David Bohm, which I think really invite us to consider that where does your mind end? And your mother's, your father's, your great-grandfather's, the people sitting next to you, maybe the doors and windows are wide open on the inside. Okay? The integrated nervous system. The greatest thing in all education is to make the nervous system our ally instead of our enemy. And we do that through training the mind. I love this quote that has emerged over the years, that our greatest competitive advantage is in our collective brain power, so to speak. But let's look a little bit more closely at this. How many of you know about neuroplasticity? What a gift this science has been for us. Basically, what we're seeing is that as we train our minds, we change our brains. And how many of you notice a difference between these two headshots up here, which are composites of data? The blue one, kind of cool colors, is a group of people, naive meditators, practice for a week, like your child playing their recorder or violin for a week. The ones with the warmer colors are the virtuosos, who have logged between 15,000, 30,000, and 45,000 hours worth of practice. And they're doing a meditation on limitless compassion. And basically what the warmer colors are there are gamma waves that are basically waves of connectivity of energy and information flow across the brain, so that doesn't it look like they're running a different operating system? And basically, you can't go buy this or download it. You have to grow your own through practice. You can't read a book about mindfulness and retool your brain. You need to practice. And I think I'll just skip over this. There's a lot of research on it. This is how it works, okay? So what values are in here? How many of you have had life experiences? Okay? How many of you have noticed that life experiences give rise to beliefs, worldviews, and identities? How many have noticed that those help to determine your values and what you care about? And have you noticed that those determine your choices and your habits? And your choices and your habits and your lifestyle then determines what we pay attention to. And those circuits that are activated through paying attention to music, to beauty, to whatever it is, as we activate those circuits, those neural circuits get stronger, they grow more dendritic connections, and we rewire the brain, changing the sculpture of the brain, changing the set points of perception, and then our next wave of experience cycles through that. So it's brilliant just to see and understand how this works. New research at Max Planck Institute is showing really conclusively that different kinds of meditation practices are developing different parts of the brain. Okay? And as Michelle said earlier, there are millions of different kinds of meditation practices, each of which are going to retool the nervous system in different ways. Stretching this a little bit further, studies show that human neurons, they're separated into two batches, sealed in electromagnetically shielded Faraday cages, and then stimulated with a laser, react simultaneously with each other, even though it's not happening through electromagnetic transmission. And that just doesn't happen in petri dishes. That happens with really closely heart-loving bonded couples that are put in separate places and activated in different ways. The waveforms of their responses are simultaneous. And we had a mind-blowing experience of that once in the lab when we were in separate Faraday cages of just nanosecond of complete alignment and sustained entrainment for quite a while. I mean, it's just amazing. So attuned relationships. How many of you have heard the word kindfulness?
Beyond mindfulness.
Yes, our gift to you. Okay, it's a real nice evolution to the language here. You know, paying attention in a heartful way is really the key to all social attunement and empathic resonance. And you know, to keep in mind as we look deeply into the emotions are a collective experience. That if you're happy, if your friend becomes happy, someone who you've never met, that has a greater effect on your happiness than if somebody puts $5,000 in your pocket. And this is a branch of science that is really out there, and the data's great. Just saying that there's a contagion of emotions and through our social networks affecting people who we've never even met. Tanya Singer, again, from Max Planck Institute. A lack of compassion is arguably the greatest, most mind-boggling cause of humankind's biggest failures. Yet we can develop that. The research is showing that the parts of your brain that light up when you see the pain of others are right next to the parts of your brain that light up when you're having your own pain. And that leads to, through empathic resonance, we can be overwhelmed by feeling the suffering of the world. But when we go to compassion, which is different from empathy, when we reach out with a kind word or a touch or an email or a prayer, when we respond to that sense of empathic suffering with compassion, it's a health-enhancing, ennobling factor. So there's a whole lot of good research on compassion that's coming up right now. So just look, turn sideways and just look at somebody else near you for a moment, who doesn't have to be looking back at you, they may. And just for a moment, regard them as, oh, another myself. Who, just like me, wants to be happy. Look around, see somebody else. Just like me, they want to have meaningful life and work. Look around to somebody else. Just like me, they were born, they've struggled, they've done the best they can. Someday they'll die. Bless them on their journey. And imagine going through life tuned to this perception of, oh, just like me, instead of judgment, like drive-by shootings as we move through the world. This is one of the core practices at the C-Care program at Stanford, and a real liberator. And this notion that the whole idea of compassion is based on a keen awareness of our interdependence, our interrelatedness, and that of all living beings, that we're all interwoven together. So hopefully this is going to play. I'm going to bail from this and just play this little piece.
Dear brothers and sisters, we all same human being. Different color, different race.
Apologies, let's just go here.
Yeah.
No.
I think Matthew's got it going, Joel.
Oh. This is stressful.
That's all right.
Please send your compassion. And
It has happened to all of us once.
okay. Wow. I think we're just going to bail on that.
No.
Okay. Go back to the... Okay, here we go.
Compassion in action.
Okay.
Empathic resonance.
I think we need a woman involved.
Thank you. Let's just... Okay. No, that's not on the screen, though. Okay, we're deep enough into it. I'm just going to find the video here, so hold on.
Yeah, Joel.
Yeah,
Shift F.
here. Is this it? No, that's not.
Yay. Never give up.
We all same human being. Different color, different race, different nationalities, different religion, doesn't matter. We all same human being. In fact, entire 6 billion human beings are same. Mentally, emotionally, physically, same. Now today's reality, your livelihood very much depends on other continent. We have to think the well-being of entire humanity. So a sense of global responsibility comes only through a sense of concern of well-being of other. So therefore, the sense of compassion or sense of concern of other is the key factor to bring real peace, real happy world.
Oh, we were just with His Holiness in Brussels recently for the Power and Care conference, which was brilliant. And it was such a brilliant conversation of people really looking at the relationship between our power and our influence and our potential for love and for care. So, okay, we'll try and make as graceful a recovery from that as we can. So, I think catching up here. So, just to consider the profound interrelatedness, the mastery and the mystery, the science and the sacredness, related to these 3 factors. Where we'd like to go from here as we're moving towards wrapping up is an invitation and a challenge and a prayer. From our work in this domain over the last 45 to 50 years, we've seen, it's just so much unnecessary suffering. Working as clinicians, working in corporate America, working in the military, working in many countries around the world. And I think, the potential that exists in having individuals learn how to come to more low entropic states, develop the capacity to source deeper wisdom with a deeper motivation for love and compassion, and then meet up with other people seeking solutions to huge global problems, and to tap into like an array of telescopes, a net of deep contemplative research supplemented through laboratory research and online resources, developing the capacity of cadres of bio-cybernetic bodhisattvas who can go out into the world and grapple with huge problems in deep ways together. I think maybe the golden lining to these enormously challenging times that we might be able to discern the guidance that we need to find those solutions. And we've had the opportunity to do this work with a number of organizations over the years, and the results have been mind-blowing. So I'd just like to put that out as a challenge to each of us to develop our capacity to find that still place in the whirling heavens, to find that clarity in the midst of our confusion, and deepen our access to these incredible human resources that are boundless and widely available. I'm going to skip these 2.
Yeah.
So let us learn to surf together. The waves are coming, and they're not going to be small, but as it says in the Hopi prophecy, this could be a good time. This could be a good
So thank you for your heartfelt attention. Our heart's hope and desire is that this little session here has piqued your interest to explore deeper, to taste personally for yourself, the potentials here, and has affirmed your own yearning to grow in these ways of greater awareness for the benefit of all. Let's read this beautiful Wendell Berry poem on healing out loud again together.
And as we do this, I'd invite you, imagine you can reach out to all those who you draw inspiration from. Your ancestors, your family, your mentors. Reach out, hold their hands, and imagining that reaching to their mentors and their teachers in an infinite succession back in time. And at the same time, imagine reaching out to all those who you were a leader or a teacher or a source of inspiration to, and through them reaching to generations to come as we read this, with a sense of receiving and radiating.
Plugging in, connecting. We clasp the hands of those who go before us and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance, and the larger circle of all creatures passing in and out of life,